Hello, America. This is in Connecticut and Weathersfield. The, when I say I can tell you science better. It's no opinion. In other words, they are preventing premises treatments that have not been through this filter. Every modern country is in a semi-ancient trap that is exploiting where and how the human science is actually manifest. Our voice, our fact-keeping nature quality slash IES aspects to them where and how the electrical engineering of being an individual, being a group, and being the species body of volume. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police form, not a criminal, not a judge. Originally and still, what was recorded was how they were employed as victims per what was sustained for their defenses of the sustained reactions to it as fact treatment nature. So this is relevant slash hyper relevant, distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously to all parts of American history, individually grouped in together, which is also evidence. See, but we have not been paying proper discernment and attention to where and how the physical, but still discernible, has conjunction to both the metaphysical and identity. In other words, where and how we are conjunctively actually manifest. And so this is where and how, for example, our speech, the ancients, anyone who's actually wants to be honest knows. When you hear it, in other words, there is what is hyper evidential. But originally and still, we know that American history was told through voices that were denying what was hyper evidential, and they were exploiting exceptions in exception nature that the breaching method forced sustained. It wasn't anybody's fault, but it was inseparable from everybody's motivations. It was inseparable from everybody's premises treatments. It was inseparable, therefore, people's positive and negative treatments simultaneously. That's identity treatments, title treatments, value treatments. See how value and identity have simultaneously a relationship to positive and negative. Since before computers worked, the definition of what an array was manifest. Since before computers, the database relationships were already involved with that breaching method that had slavery, sickly distinctly against every Native American, every colonist, and our founding parents who wanted it ended, but didn't have free speech, had to hide their roles with counter extorting the rest of the founding parents. So each modern nation had no choice but to form an identity of unity that was better than the alternative /S, but it was also simultaneously, increasingly, they're all systems tactical ulterior from the one that is natural, the one that really is the answer /S. Why? What are the functions by emotions and passions? We've only heard this used where commonly, distinctly, we're non-distinctly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. That's how we can see. In other words, there is a hyperconjunction to all the invisible but still discernible elements, therefore elements of conjunction, parts of English. From the most finite part, note finite in the definite article and in the predicate and in the indefinite article. The definite article, a or an. I mean, the is the definite article. A or an are the indefinite articles. So a, you would put before a word with a consonant. And when there's a word with a vowel, So an orange, you wouldn't say a orange, you would say an orange because there's a vowel before it. There's an identity of hyperconjunction between all parts of English grammar, even between. This is really why that we use the word and orange in apple. See the word coming after the word, the indefinite article and, it's beginning with, those words begin with a vowel. So an orangutan, an oblong, and oblong. So if I would use a word that's a box, a box, I wouldn't use an box. I would say a box. A and an are the indefinite articles. The is the definite article. In Arabic, is the definite article. Note the word finite, the root of the word definite and indefinite with it is finite. A finite thing, the smallest thing, the order of the finite. Imagine in your mind, you know, because you don't have to imagine, you know in your mind actually what it is. See, they have people you telling you to imagine things that where and how they left the sciences used remotely, as where and how victims that needed to use the sciences no longer unabridged, no longer present, because they were no longer, functional. So there was true that they were unabridged, and people knew that, but no one. And in other words, there are proofs that there was a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise that made modern countries A through Z self-valued victims as reactions as archetypal criminal enterprises, not knowing that that was the method and motivation really behind what was causing countries as the species volume already was bound. The identity of every country already is here, and we are already there per its system. But now it's through a filter. See, even this filter is individually grouped in together. So the words of American history have only been heard through this filter. And see, the breaching method, the words of other countries' histories have not even been heard through this filter. So the filter made and maintain self-value, qualities of fact, human nature, opinions, and convictions, and defenses of them. That can't be defended but by self-valuing even the people that everyone argues with, and other people that uses of premises treatments that assume opinions and convictions legitimate, that have no legitimacy, and in other words, that are affected per the breaching method, tactically / hyper tactically affected. When I say hyper, we're dealing with the identity of simultaneous nature that is actually everywhere at once. And then all the other identities individually grouped in together in that, because that's how its science works. The emotions are about what is about the value of the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. Also, what is hyper evidential is that, and how originally still they would prevent people the time ways or too fast use time simultaneously too fast, too slow to get around the quality of fact keeping nature, where and how the colonists could see colonists, including Native Americans. But see, that was their identity wasn't valued or wasn't even recognized, but because it was recognized, but it was being measured and maintained by the Rosewood colonization that were being measured and maintained by the hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise. And Also measuring and maintaining beyond them was how the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprises was measuring and maintaining the identity of countries grouped and their logic and their needs increasingly to hide life progressions and to hide from and value hurt, or to even go down to finite individuals need to hurt, trick, force, persuade, worse, keep everyone, attached to fake words, fake news, to use a phrase of Donald Trump, but use it as a real science. Fake news attach me and others know who were in the context in Manhattan next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. And before that, the same people intercities had been people interstates, criminally foreign influenced, as ones involved with the World Trade Center and with the World Trade Center is involved also with Washington and manifest intercampuses because people's jobs and things like that, and where they have voices speaking for the identity of the law, and defenses of opinions and convictions, originally instilled in collusion with that unhinged, because it was here before our founding parents were born, sickly and distinctly with slavery, North and South. No, we have to use what is hyper positive. See, there's a difference between making positive out of negative, as the breaching method taught everyone to do for itself, and making positive that's also positive onto itself. It is positive, also positive onto itself, where nature demonstrates negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures in demonstration of a system that entertains something like slavery, because it's entertaining finite fact treatments, nature qualities, premises treatment qualities, sequence value qualities, simultaneous nature, simultaneous identities of relationship to nature's nature. In other words, it made nature, where there is exceptions, to make positive value nature progressions and to make negative value nature progressions, exactly the opposite of how and why nature needs us to make as Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous difference to the rest of space nature, where more forever nature can be made. Only the extent of it is debatable. See, but again, offensively, that which we have formally conceived is in collusion with the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and that nature of criminalness, insidiousness, inherent to people's opinions A through Z, because all ages and locations of education have been told through a filter that can't be entertained and afford the revelations in their protraction, in their conjunction to all other unrelated subjects, even like with American history told properly, where and how you understand how our parents not only didn't have free speech, they had to entertain treatments of positive and negative, of identity, of title. Like everyone else, if they didn't, they would be sensed by the breaching method that had a whole bunch of other identity, ground, locations, natures, needs, interests apparent, but not what was really keeping out the outcome/s. It took control. It took control of how everyone would self-value and does self-value, both tactically/hyper tactically, criminally foreign influenced opinions/convictions in the place of those short words, obligated to locations like campuses, like even daycare before that. See, before these parties fight with each other, as they do, as then while they fight with each other, they're right. They're knaves to each other, and that's why that's a truth used to lie though. Why they're countering like that. The real truth is because everyone since they were the youngest ages had an identity theft slash fraud method, including against our founding parents, as an answer slash S, inseparable from a whole bunch of other different answers. And this is where nature is value slash value as nature. So criminal insidiousness itself, the breaching method realized it could deliver a whole bunch of identities of criminal insidiousness natures like wrongdoers, a whole bunch of mass wrongdoing that also realized it could leverage through other motivations, nature's needs, and it's just narratives, finite, grouped, and together into styles of getting over and having gotten over on nature's conjunction slash hyperconjunction slash quality of diffusion relevance, where that is only in our control one way. Evolution is about hyper, simultaneous. It's identity of relationship to itself that is also positive, where more forever nature that is also positive onto itself can be made here, distinctly from the rest of Earth and from the rest of space slash existence, rather. In other words, to explain that, you have to understand that that is distinctly from the identity of hyper simultaneous that is space and that is existence, but distinctly, not distinctly and simultaneously, while and how being itself. Offensively, to keep this obfuscated, for example, no one realized, because all the sciences have been abridged, because victim reactions would have to respond as fact-cheating nature. But no one fathomed that the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, even though they were coupled on with more real things that were also fake or theater to make people respond wrong as fact-cheating nature in semi-ancient times. It is more probable and is more practical than the recorded self-value, having been criminally foreign influence database relationships and involvement with that fact-cheating nature-oriented possession of everybody to all locations, areas, and states while they were colonies, while they were still being sustained against the Native Americans, which were therefore incapable of defending the quality of fact-cheating nature to remember, the short words, the revelations to protract from regarding the proper answer slash S. For example, what's wrong with the environment? For example, what is really the worth of the passions and emotions behind the premises treatments, and therefore defenses, not just then, of people making positions for regarding the environment. And it's used to measure and maintain by a breaching method and country that uses countries, groups themselves measuring and maintaining, blaming other things. When you bring up the environment, anyone, you bring up an environment, you bring up, like, look at New York City. That was designed the whole time. The breaching method was off the record by everyone, measuring and maintaining what it was causing and its involvement to all questions and answers. Not because it is nature that is really the hyper simultaneous there. See, but the hyper simultaneous, it is the mimic of that even countries grouped, even the power of countries grouped, if they unite, even the countries, we have nuclear weapons. You still can't, if you can't be a quality of fact-cheating nature, So they can't even explain emotions and passions, honestly. The people at the other end of weapons here and there, they can't even speak for the identities of their countries, honestly. So they have to value increasingly conflicts that had been employed by the breaching method that was a complete identity, a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. A complete identity has a whole bunch of identities that are, while they are complete more and more as their own identity, they have a semi-nature relationship to the complete identity. English was revealed to teach this. There are proofs that the colon and the semicolon, they were originally referred to as the victory and the semi-victory. Even if that is not true, there are proofs that, in other words, they don't even remember the history of English because what they've been pretending is practical. And with defenses of that. They can't defend that and ourselves from the same time, because other people's logic is reliant upon that. People are reliant upon that identity of pseudo integrity that pretends that they're allowed that free speech has been allowed. Excuse me, free speech has not been allowed. Free speech has not been defended. So there was a quality of fact-cheating nature at all locations that was preventing it while forcing everyone to pretend other. And if they didn't, then the sense and sensibilities of the breaching method, and then of countries grouped, and then of each country, the complete possession, for example, not of just of England, Connecticut, the colony, and then when it was still Connecticut, not just the colonies north and south, slavery was entrenched. Specifically, so in England, people wouldn't be able to defend treatments of England and of English and afford discern what is actually being demonstrated by nature. For example, about the history of English, actually, as it actually was, as they are about the history of other languages, as they actually are, because they go together too. Same way, the same way it just works out. The sounds of English language have better than living relationship to themselves, individually grouped and together. Same way it just works out. There are needs for correlation to discern those measurements with music, those intervals between notes. Each one that has a distinct identity of relationship to its other one. For example, the E and F have no semitone between them. And like the A and B. So people see, discern, and more. Trinity is a quality of diffusion with this. With what? Sight, discernment, and quality, and the value of it, where with what is relevant about the value of what is to be, but has not become yet. It's all right if you want to, where how you have rights to and needs to speak about, use the relevance of that relevant to investments in the stock market, for example, long-term physical speculation, which is more than physical. If you bring up a country, or a company as a subject, it's obviously a whole bunch of subjects. If you bring up an individual, a whole bunch of identities of the body, parts of the body, individually grouped together. You bring up a species body, it's an individual body. And that can only be, because that's why individuals can only be individual. I mean, that is more than that, but And group difference. It's what is also in demonstration. There is sequence and simultaneous nature is relevant here. So it took the identity of the ground locations, but it was sophistication here before they were. All exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration of the same thing. Criminally, that was because of criminally foreign influenced method, roles, as a whole bunch of other methods, nature's needs, interests, styles of logic relative to nature's demonstrations. So we have to be able to check if someone's making positive out of negative, as criminal insidiousness natures of positive, or if they're making hyper positive out of negative. But if we check the way we can. It shows that everyone already made all negatives out of positive, as hyper negative, as the value of our quality of diffusion, as the value of our systems A through Z, all tactically ulterior from the one that revealed. That conjunction reveals itself. So I don't know if anyone's on. No one's online here, but this is Americans. Can you hear me, Americans? New York City, Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut. These are revelations. This is proper how we have to teach. MSNBC, Fox News, CNN. Can you hear me? I watch you guys on the television, on the channel where you go like this, and then you go up. You can see and then there's three on the bottom, and then one of them every once in a while I try to press it. I don't get the channel, but you can watch it when you have it on there. Direct TV, that people see. In other words, no, nothing. That's not. That's not a compliment or obscene. It was a compliment. I'm trying to be nice to Jerk TV, but I'm trying to say one of those channels where you have the option to summary view what they're speaking about on either of the news channels. Now, their sources, if you've watched my videos, not only have they been giving them fake information, they've been using that information to replace what is actually recorded with roles, not only with a whole bunch of other countries, not only with a whole bunch of other countries' groups, but also with the identity of that breaching method there. Therefore, the identity of a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise that we are syntactically capable of blaming and of discerning relationships too, in ways that also simultaneously reveal that and how our formal legal identities have been countering the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature is exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs then and now. Complete possession over the defenses of their logic and therefore of their premises and treatment, sequence treatment value. The value of sequence, truth, even though told true, even though it's gone, is increasingly inseparable from all topics as American history, from all topics as Russian history, for example. Russia and America since before cars, before the founding parents of America, before were even born, before the founding parents of Russia were even born, the suburbs of Russia and America were already tactically denatured identity grounds, identity of relationship to itself by a breaching method. And now this is relevant because we have nuclear weapons. And whatever it is. China invented something. China had yin yang. And see, yin yang, there are proofs. Yin yang and alpha and omega can't be taught properly unless together. Because this is about how it is exception nature, and that is about how it is 1/3/5 identities of sequence/simultaneous nature that we could discern from within it by discerning how it has how it is hyper invisible but still discernible as that hyper conjunctive to all parts of English grammar. Wow. While a correlative conjunction is being a correlative conjunction, it is simultaneously being as a hyperconjunction, while a coordinating conjunction is being a conjunction, is simultaneously being a hyperconjunction. This is simultaneously being relevant to an identity that is one identity that the sciences share, individually grouped and together. And that's also how it demonstrates itself in the relevance/hyper-relevance of itself, the hyper-simultaneous. I'm not telling you to agree on a spirit, the hyper-simultaneous. Being an individual is being a simultaneous nature, being a sequence/simultaneous nature as a quality of diffusion, as one body of forever natures. Relativity/hyper-relativity to a system that has conjunction to why and how we need to use words like values and things like that. But see, these are all tactical ulterior from it. So the significance of people trying to make statements, in other words, this is an identity theft fraud method. They tell us not to speak with strangers, right? The overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, and those sick killers, and the people that they call the Brianna something with CNN. Dr. Fauci called them the crazies. They don't deal with actual premises. Who say, "Oh, well, the guy was driving with guns and said he was coming to get me." All right, but we don't even know if they made that up. First of all, because second of all, we know that the police fabricate police reports. Outside of courts, they plant evidences since founding, with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the other branches of government kept needing to hide the same finite act of progressive lies together because of their roles with identity theft, fraud, slander together. That's one of the things the breaching method is sickly, non-distinctly. Specifically, so while it is sickly distinctly against everyone, to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. So even though it is non-distinctly hurting everybody, no one counters it, because countering it requires a quality of fact human nature that all formal identities of who already want to pretend they could speak for things critical, like integrity of the law, like the nature of the law. See, this method knew that it backed modern countries into a pseudo sophistication, knowing that nature's complete identity, nature's nature, the three natures that we could discern of it: inherent, active, and progressive, distinctly but bound here, non-distinctly too. The value of what is the progressive value of what those laws were used for was already present then in the moment when where and how people were a value/value progression as a syntax nature, as there, therefore, as X qualities of fact, human nature relevant to this. Nature's nature. All parts of it. So they all parts, in other words, a criminal insidiousness nature, like a wrongdoer, relevant to people as people in the furtherance of predicate acts, or criminal insidiousness propagation itself, those illusions. They're also fact, human nature oriented predicate acts. See, don't forget the worst parts, all the worst physical things that were done to Native Americans, colonists, and Americans, sickly distinctly too, sustained against Native Americans while they're tactically denaturing the ground, the nature, memory of it, the nature of people say, oh, that someone says, in other words, this is most probable. There was it was like, look at the seeds that are manifest today. The only reason they're manifest, not because they were engineered, because the identity of the ground had not yet been tactically denatured, no longer capable of hosting, of having the elements come together to make that perfect soil for that plant, to make those perfect conditions for that, what that plant really, really wants and needs. See, then we'll say, oh, it's the people with that they employed the identities of A through Z, countries, now filters of identities, titles, grounds, voices, industries, voices, to the plants, the delicate, finite details that go with the native system, pure. And they can only be defended through people have to make artificial soils, give artificial things. Further and further, that sophistication is incapable of defending itself, and of affording the short words and means and needs to have everyone have real science to all locations. In other words, even the ground, the worms are no longer there. The population of the worms is going way, way down because we take away the grass. Worms are for the system that tells us how it causes positive value nature progressions, action natures, or negative value nature progressions, action natures. When it rains, the worms walk into the water. They walk right into ponds. Then they change the soil next to the ponds. The fish population all of a sudden, and everything changes. And still people are going, oh, this is the cycle of life, or this is the food chain. They have the sciences abridged. And so the constant roles with that defended is, nature is the sciences. It's the identity the sciences share individually grouped and together the same way that the notes of English, the notes of music do. Even if you carry it over to another instrument, even if you make your own instrument, the E and the F, they're not going to have a semitone between them. Everything is a demonstration of the identity all parts of our body share. Not just with our identity complete, but it's semi-nature relationship, not just before while being to other people, more so than even to the species body, is to its identity, and relevant to where and how we are manifest as syntax nature, therefore function. In other words, how its identity is the answer /S to where and how and why space and existence. And why I say space / existence, because more and more forever nature is being made. Only the extent of it is debatable. And when someone tries to debate that, they're their fact treatments and their fact treatment nature, they're going to have to self-value criminally foreign influence premises treatment, sequence treatments, uses of the sciences abridged by, where and how those stupid things people say that kept and keep out the revelations, those hyper that from the what is hyper evidential, like regarding how all parts of America since founding, there are of the grounds, locations have an unrelented breaching method uses of their positive and negative treatments and collusion, where and how positive treatments that can be there can be truths can be used for lies. Truths can be used to deny exceptions in exception nature. Even they have juxtaposed where they have that stupid ignorance exploited at each age differently. Where, in other words, the breaching method measures and maintains other told as the short words with the opinions / convictions. And that slash is an identity. And that slash is the value of the identity summary nature relationship to the hyper simultaneous. That identity of volume where value is nature / nature is value, inseparable from all other volumes. Therefore, as the extent we could discern, as an identity, each body has a semi-nature relationship to, including grouped together like space and existence, space / existence, because there's also where and how that one hyper possession over humanity, over all parts of space / existence. It also demonstrates that it is more practical and more probable, and demonstrably how matter is generated per its identity of volumes, identity of relationship to itself, and the increasing value of that. Being a value, being one body, so 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. The same way people go to jobs and they're going to use the calculators all the time because they have changing variables and things like that. And because they're the only ones that understand the constants involved and the variables. It's the only one that is and guides what is constant and variable and is discernible. Same way, but that sine, cosine are functions on a calculator, addition, multiplication, subtraction, the same way they are functions on a calculator, and you can get an answer. You can get answer /s regarding everything, regarding how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts. It means out of nowhere. It requires demonstrating too how all a quality of fact treatment nature that will afford people to use short words that are actually what are true all way. So this identity theft, fraud, slander method uses people that go to our schools that we don't know, and then they pretend other, and with people that you around you and stuff like that. This is where it uses where everyone speaks through others, and we're overt criminal enterprises, private criminal enterprises. That insidiousness, like with just with people that blame other things, others themselves, or just ignore don't care because everyone's drowned up. Everyone only heard it done that way. Where how every location, area, and state has bound in collusion with inclusion people that use timed even uses of criminal assistance, positive treatments and negative treatments of collusion. And this is only, fathomable to be called, being and having been entertained by people because of the method. There are hyper evidential proofs of it when people try to bring up parts and pretend they're only bringing it up to focus. In other words, like try to bring up slavery without leaving out the torture method. You can't tell about the slavery. Try to blame. Everyone's still blaming other people for other things relevant to where the wood is hyper evidential, where it is prevented free speech, and how it got away with keeping everyone blaming what it caused and keeps on other things, others ourselves. We are in the same trap in Russia, in China, in America. When they bring up these countries and these territories in the ocean and their rails with the nuclear bombs, they never have been a quality of fact treatment. They never allowed or brought up the quality of fact treatment nature capable of being the other side and justifying, a means out. In other words, of we're still in that trap that was used to force, trick her, persuade, and make only possible to survive. Native Americans had to start using the value systems with our syntax nature, where they could eat, how they could defend themselves. So they would use how they had to use words like defense, and over there leaving out increasingly the simultaneous exception nature, increasingly fake ones tied to our value treatment. So then it's increasingly no one could understand when trying, or honestly, and a whole bunch of people dishonestly, simultaneously, when someone tries to make value treatments tied to with that one identity of hyper simultaneous nature, needs our words functional per its system. What is actually nature's nature. So how could it knew that the short words would be required, like criminal insidiousness. Slavery was about a breaching method that was a criminal insidiousness propagation method that brought all natures of criminal insidiousness, natures of the ground's voices, identities A through Z. It made criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments uses incapable of defending that and of affording the revelations by what they were supposed to be taught. People A through Z. And nature was going to keep demonstrating that. So that was while it was being sustained, all that hurt and all those, we need the good too. We need to feel good about ourselves. Exactly. Them needing to feel good about themselves and bad about themselves simultaneously was the employment of the breaching method. So we have a nature that is insidious, positive and negative treatments, identity treatments, time treatments, identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles that people who have their kids in the schools now, simultaneously with the parents. See, some of the parents are police. It's not just that there's the police and then there's the school board and then there's the parents. And the corruption is also with overt criminal enterprises involved with those police and the parents and in the courts. They're kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies together, identity thefts and frauds together. They're kept pretending because we don't have journalist license that gives them the right to, steal our identities with the people in our campuses. Because what happens after when there are people that aren't even in your classrooms, you don't even see them around, and they're involved with putting fake things in databases. They're involved with those teachers off the campuses. In other words, nothing personal against them. Then but if you sustain that, you have to use those teachers and their names. Then they just make them, oh, well, solve it in court then, sue us. We'll get on paper with the courts then. The courts you can't, they're involved at the location. That's why we can't leave out their roles with the criminal enterprises and the overt ones. Their roles at locations, forcing qualities of fact-keeping nature in collusion with the identity theft frauds, with the overt criminal enterprises, the mayor's kids, like this Debbie Gold and her father, former Mayor Gold. And then she has a brother named Lee Gold and neighbors of hers and his. I never saw him in my life. But also the corners of the streets. They have FBI involved since they were kids, involved with child programs used to keep them a pseudo sophistication, the complete possession of that hyper criminal insidiousness nature that even they don't want to be involved with, but he used them remotely since they were kids. Even former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with a vertical and horizontal database, organized crime method, interbranch, all exception nature tied to them, intermilitary. You have positive and negative treatments that are in collusion, identity theft, frauds, slanders with sick people killers, and people next to the body on spots because of how they're all next to the schools involved with identity theft, frauds, instances connected. People pretend we're holding on to the court, New Britain Spirit. They pretend we're holding on to their names. They're sequence shifting. They brought their names up. They are the ones involved. Also, their sources, people that work with New Britain Superior Court and Hartford Courts in Middletown. They're involved with cliques with overt criminal enterprises since they were kids, with the areas. Involved also with other natures of organized crime because everyone, shares employments, therefore, and sensibilities of people at all locations, where relevant to where and how. And that's how we use that all locations remotely, where everyone was syntactically identity theft fraud styles, slander styles against everyone else, even when not wanting to be. They're just attaching everyone to fake words. That's why increasingly they self-value roles even preemptively, having been using this through lifetimes. Where and how they have the interbranch family members confess, demonstrate, and record their roles with overt criminal enterprises, criminally foreign influenced, and then all of private and exception nature tied to them. So they use these methods behind people's backs, so you're not going to be able to respond to instances correctly. And even if you do, that's what they want. They want a response, non-responsive, or and then they're putting they're putting fake natures of ties between people. They're kept needing to hide the same finite, active, progressive lies, identity theft, fraud styles, natures, needs, interests, intercities. So the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with a whole bunch of people that went to my grammar school that are involved with the family members of principals, and that are involved with the schools that train principals, and that train state police, and that train plainclothes police officers, apparently because they have their, and demonstrably because they have their because of how they have their acting coaches and the news media involved with criminal uses of corners of streets. The corner of street at Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield is also where the Heather Hansen recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, sought me out to confessions of this as a stranger, though, when I was a kid. And there are boyfriends of hers that pretended they didn't like each other for that, but I only know because they, the same time they were pretending other, because they were making confessions to me because they were involved in the identity thefts and frauds against me with courts and with police forms, lying about the nature of relationships between people and lying about, including with complete strangers and people that aren't even in classes with each other, have nothing to do with each other. In backgrounds, they're putting fake things and as rules with that being and having been done on the campuses. And the teachers aren't the ones affecting this. This is being affected from off campuses, but that's sustained. Then it gets everyone involved. It uses instances like with the principal child abuser. There were more then and now, where and how they had more. They have more roles with digital crimes too, with upskirts, and roles with the FBI with that. They have a 1-800 call FBI recorded involved with this, and with a detective Samuda involved with people tied to Heather Hansen and his roles with sexual abuses of Elaine Davenport and his roles with identity thefts and frauds, with all three of them against me. So we need to get the paper too, because they've been playing games with some foreign and domestic military police, also involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids and with their doctors, and doctors attaching kids to fake ties to themselves and their families, including with the news media, multi-front. So the interbranch has been preventing writing, and the news media has been preventing writing and fabricating audio and video as their rules with collusion at Weathersfield town offices and intercities. People involved with the used remotely. So they want and need to pretend passions for us using their names. So they bring their names, involvements, and then they lie about our responses to it. The Britain Superior Court did that. Also, they have their Facebook pages involved with them, with predicate acts with WFSB and with Fox Connecticut News. They're still being coached to roles. Also, there are people associated with the buildings next to them. Also, there are some lawyers tied to and police forms in the corner of near the corner of Wells Road and Walker Hill Street and Walker Hill, associated with a Pandolf family, associated with some intelligence community with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, and people in Glastonbury, and involved with also with various depositions and various legal cases, and people involved with identity thefts and frauds with me, with people from other countries through time connected. So they make little instances where they pretend to know you, and then you only know them because they sought me out to pretend other, as the people in collusion with complete strangers. Some police, but these are ones also will avert criminal enterprises. There are people with the Town Line Drive in Rocky Hill associated with this Mike Pandolf. He's got brothers. I don't know their names. I think one of them has the name Anthony. I never met them. I never met his parents. He has lawyers involved, and like the police and courts, they would make arrays. Like they have a McCord family also involved with the Morals, people on Route 3 with federal crimes with the courts and the prison, people with all kinds of abuses of kids, sexually, medically, drugs. They have Koreans involved with it, and with the Morals, with that switch name, they have the same names too, and has something to do with their roles also with the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive. People sought me out through time to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm roles with identity thefts and frauds instances, as people also simultaneously having been roles with connected parallel intercities connected, falsified police reports, and roles with overt criminal enterprises with untimely deaths and uses of them, and identity thefts and frauds and slanders type instances connected intercities, has a whole bunch of people at Trinity College and at CCSU also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with that corner. And they have a Mike Roberts, who was also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles by people on my street, and by Jennifer Kennepicky, involved with the corners on the principal child abuser street, and roles of identity thefts and frauds through time, and uses of exceptions and exception nature, and programs with the kids criminally involved, like DACA, and uses of the kids of the deans, involved with identity theft, frauds instances too, and slanders instances, because those are going to be increasingly relevant where and how we're going to be examining more and more the you know identity theft, fraud, slander method against every single Native American colonist and American citizen, sickly distinctly, as that one simultaneously, sickly non-distinctly, simultaneously as that one against every single person of the A through Z of the entire species identity of volume. We're in a simulation trap. So each must rap as one. Boxing is fun. Be legion / tribes / exception nature rise. Some roll, some flux, sometimes, and some stay. The time is right. Try. So, Americans, Connecticut, Wethersfield, here. It means appear. New York, New York City, looking pretty. Here, your song. Boxing is strong. Boxings or says or not. Thank you. Have a great day. Many pray. Anthony Wall, youtube.com, youtube.com/user/Romulus Wall. It's Anthony Wall. My name is Anthony Wall. Watch my boxing style. I have to get a boxing license, but I have tons of fights, boxings, insights. So this is also I have to too. People involved with the World Trade Center attack were also involved in intercities, Connecticut, with identity theft, fraud, slanders connected as people tied to the remote uses of the World Trade Center, criminally foreign influence, and of Washington, D.C., criminally foreign influence and sound founding as victim reactions to it, but those reactions were employed by the breaching method too. That's where we have to examine what was sustained and observe all the criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments in collusion as what is actually recorded as American history, as what is actually recorded as other countries' history. So we have to learn how to use and to use what is hyper evidential. We have to learn how to discern exceptions to where and how. Exceptions relevant to opinions and convictions with people regarding economies and regarding people that keep that, part of the breaching method. And so, regardless if people are just, look, we were told to play, this is how we play. That's fine. Don't keep play. And that fake, passions, emotions by that fake justice, originally still. Then they can't discern what passions and emotions are really about. Passions and emotions are about the emotions are about the simultaneous. See, but no one could afford the simultaneous. So passions only speak for semi nature, sequence nature alone, as styles. That mean need to get away with that by valuing the reason. One of the reasons one of the ways people get away with sick logic is per all the ways defenses of abridged sciences, pretending other. Theater at all locations has only been heard. That is employed by the breaching method, measured and maintained, needed by itself at all locations to hide from her the short words and revelations actually capable of being at all spots, especially where the science is, where education is supposed to be on. So people using the most knowledge to get over on what people with the most correlation for the means by the most honest. And so the honest, they want, so they value the sequence. They value this being having been involved at the grammar school level, even from the kindergarten campus, the other age. When the kids go in systems, there's a method. There are people in the back doing tricks, exploiting phenomena no one realized. They're affecting class placements specifically for identity theft, fraud, slanders. So I never had a conversation with this Stephen Stocko in my life. He's pretending passion and emotions with Wethersfield Police and the courts. People involved on off the stage with judicial branch officers with him, and with people on off um, Two-Route Highway, Hangdog Lane, for example. So they have the sense and sensibilities of the people there too, being coached. That's why they're delaying, because they're getting people in the background. Well, why is he speaking about us? I'm gonna have to speak about you more if you don't get the goddamn police for the one name in sequence. They've been switching, forging names. I've been asking you since before the World Trade Center attack. Now you have some sick detective Samuda involved with child with sexual medical crimes against little kids. You sick son of a bitch, Detective Samuda. Fear God with the doctors you said are involved with you, and how you did the fourth falsified police report, switched names with the other officer. Let's get that McDonald's on paper too with this guy, because he switched. McDonald's was the arresting officer. He's got roles with my town's police chief and some foreign and domestic, and a DeMoro family, some people with EMS involved with a body dumping spot of a serial killer, involved with identity thefts and frauds with them, and with some Domain brothers and some Mendez police on off Fox Connecticut News, on off WFSB and locations next to it. Uh, um, um, you know, a whole bunch of people were quite confessed. I mean, like the McCord brothers. They have the Paula DeMoro too involved with it. With Central Connecticut State University has state police and has FBI and has other agencies and other countries involved with all kinds of sexual circles and involved with identity thefts and frauds. And that's also relevant because they're controlling locations with connected identity thefts and frauds that are also mixed with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones with the areas. And then their uses of it that were brought up with their wire crime methods with the campuses. I caught them with this because they need to hide their lie progressions because they've been lying about people in the background, intercities connected through time. They also do that to prevent counters to what's actually going down on campuses and off campuses. Because from off campuses, we have our interbranch and their family members keeping on and off campuses sense and sensibilities with the whole bunch of other countries, keeping them criminally foreign influence here and there, fake sides, so that have to pretend they had integrity anyway. So they have a collusion force. They never had the integrity to pretend they had integrity. Let's get them done. Let's get her done. Boxing is fun. fake branches fold to fall. Build wall. Please fix the fake news. That's a paraphrasing. It's a paraphrase of so all the treatments of really the border issue would be inseparable. Science with integrity understands why and how, for example, the cell body, the cell nucleus, and the cell wall /S, how the walls are shared. When one part of that cell that has a cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall is positive onto itself, positive onto the other ones. It is 1/5 identities, 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. There are means and needs to put people into temporary, even if temporary mobile, and some temporary, in other words, we keep seeing all this land that's unused and people are walking through it. We can't set up and how much money is going for nonsense, just for instances responses. So we can't set up an agreement and deal with it as a species identity of volume that's sick. It's not going to come through the identity of one of these broken, amended, abridged countries, not just their sciences. Yeah. So evolution science, way means prepare. Vaccine. I teach you things belong. So Anthony Wall, youtube.com/user/Romulus Wall. Under my YouTube video, under YouTube videos, there you press the person's name, you go to the YouTube channel. Then you can see the playlist. Then you can see the videos, list of videos. Then you can see the great things, vaccines. Use the features. Look around. Vaccine is found.